All right, welcome Aviation Nation. It's your Paul Cowboy coming at you from Stinson Municipal Airport in San Antonio, Texas. I'm joined here with my friend Kyle. Kyle is one of the pilots of the Commemorative Air Force, and today he's going to be talking to us about this very special T-6, or should I say SNJ-4?
Yes.
Aircraft that the Navy trainer, and now it's being operated by the Commemorative Air Force. Here you go, Kyle. All yours.
So the Army Air Corps named it the T-6, but the Navy had the same airplane, but they named it the SNJ, and this is an SNJ4 model. So this airplane was built in 1942, served with the Navy for many years, and is retired, then went through many hands and owners, and now we're the latest and greatest to have it. And come follow me here, we'll talk about it.
Plus, if you get the walk around.
We'll get the walk around. We'll start.
You'll be right there.
So you can hold that. Come on up.
I got it.
Yeah, we'll edit all this part out. All right. So this is our cockpit of our SNJ4 here. It's actually pretty simple. We have a lot of original instruments in here that actually still work, which is pretty cool. So original stick, that's cool. We still have the original heading indicator, directional gyro, a compass, original attitude indicator, and they still work, which is pretty amazing. And all those old switch boxes all been replaced by new modern switches and stuff. We have to add modern radios and EDSB to keep it compliant with the FAA regulations, which we have all that stuff done. But over here on the bottom left side is where a lot of the magic happens down here. So we got the prop here, the throttle, mixture, propeller here. And over here we can lock and unlock our tail wheel, which is pretty nifty. Later model SNJs or T6s, the locking mechanism is done with a stick, and that just full forward and locks the tail wheel. But this is still the old school way. The C model or the SNJ4 has a locking tail wheel. So down here, we get the landing gear lever here. We have a manual fuel pump, so we don't have an electric fuel pump on this airplane. So in order to start the engine, we have to pump this thing back and forth quite a few times to get enough fuel pressure to get it to start. We got trim, we got rudder trim, elevator trim, and just everything else is your basic airplane. We got rudder pedals, got your stick up here, and it's actually pretty roomy as far as fighter. This is a fighter trainer. This is the last airplane. This is an advanced trainer. This is the last airplane they were in before they went into their fighters, their P-51s and P-47s and Corsairs. And then we'll go downstairs. Oh, we'll talk one more thing. So this little hole up here, this is where a 30 cal machine gun used to go. So they had a synchronizing gear, went right through the cowling, and then we still have the original gun sight from 1942 on here. We have the mechanism down here, we just gotta find that little light bulb. Once you find the light bulb goes up here, shines through this hole, and refracts off the glass. Then all the forward-firing machine guns, the AT-6 or the SNJ, had 3 of them, 3 forward-firing, 2 in the wings, and 1 up here. And they were all bore-sighted to that sight. Cool.
Move to the front.
Come on down.
And then we'll
I gotta ask you, Carl. So this looks a little different than a standard T6. Why? What's going on in the back section here?
So normal T6s, sometimes track stick. So normal T6s, the back window ends there, then this section moves forward. But this one's different as the whole back end section moves forward too, because this was also used as a bomber gunner trainer. So you can sit inside here. I'll climb in and demonstrate. Inside here, and there's like a little lever you can push with your foot, and then it swings around.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And then so there was a twin 30 cal machine guns that came out. This is a modified deck that was put on after it was decommissioned. So a 30 cal machine gun would come out like this, and it has a gun mount with a swivel, and they could practice shooting at towed targets to get their training on. It was pretty nifty.
Excellent. Very smart.
Yeah, it was very smart, and it makes for a great photo shoot. So for taking flying formations of the airplanes, there's no window getting in the way of the photographer.
So in airplanes like they use when they show Tora, is that one of the models that they use to simulate the some of the Japanese aircraft?
I'm not familiar with what they used, but I know a lot of old P-25s, the tail gunner position was retrofitted with cameras.
All right.
I don't know if they use an SNJ like this one.
All right.
But I wouldn't put it past them.
All right, and can you tell me about this door? What does it do?
Yeah, so that's where the fire extinguisher goes. So you can access it from inside the plane and outside the plane.
How smart.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then there's the cargo compartment right there. It's just a canvas bag that just goes down.
Oh, wow. So you got a back connecting both sections in there. Wow. Interesting. Yeah. Really nifty. Really, really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, we're going to stop this part here. We're going to let Kyle get out, and we're going to talk a little bit about the engine. So stand by for part 2. Kyle here is going to be telling us a little bit about the engine on the SNJ.
Yeah, so this is a Pratt & Whitney 1340 radial, puts out about 600 horsepower. And we have 9 cylinders, all air cooled. And so that's really nice. It's all the cylinders right up front. They all get equal amount of air. So that's really neat. When we're doing the pre-flight of the aircraft, one thing you got to make sure we do is we have to pull what we call pulling the prop through. What this does is over here, over time, the oil sits down at the bottom of the radial, just kind of pulls down. If we try to start it like that, we can do something called a hydro lock. So there's no oil in the top cylinder, so the engine would seize up. Could potentially seize up and permanently damage the engine. So what we do is we pull the prop through, it just pumps the cylinders and pumps oil all the way up to the top. So the rule of thumb is if you have 9 cylinders, you pull it through 9 times. And so you just kind of pull it through like this. First thing before you move a prop is make sure all the electronics and ignitions and fuel is off.
So hydro lock could be a pretty significant threat to these type of engines, right? Because eventually you can bend the crankshaft and cause some significant damage to the cylinders. Now these things were built like a tank if you operate them properly. Yeah. So what kind of system do we have to like drain the oil and basically be keeping the system healthy before we start, besides turning or hand propping the aircraft?
So we have to check the oil up there. This thing holds quite a bit of oil, like 10 gallons of oil, something like that.
Oh, 10 gallons. That's huge.
Yeah, it's a huge oil tank. This thing uses lots of oil. It burns it and everything. So all the oil drips down here all the time. If it's not dripping oil, then you know there's no oil in it. So it's normal for it to leak, but we don't like the oil on the ramp. So we can actually capture the oil down here. Oil comes out through this tube, and we have this expertly crafted can that we made fit in our air scoop. And so we just take this oil out. It's still good oil. We take it out of the can and put it back in the engine before we even take off. And this is the air scoop for the carburetor. So if we don't remove this, the engine's not going to start because there's no air getting the carburetor. So part of our pre-flight is to make sure this comes out, put it inside there, and we can reuse the oil. And there's basically virtually zero mess down below the aircraft, which is really nice.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the landing gear. This as an instructor pilot in the Air Force is very interesting to me because of course it's heftily designed to take some of the impact of the bad landings that sometimes students have when they're learning how to land and operate the aircraft.
Yeah, these airplanes were built for training, so they're built to take a beating. So they're extremely tough landing gear. It's hydraulically actuated, mechanically locked landing gear. We have a hydraulic pump. We have a power push lever, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. So here, make sure the strut, we got 3 cylinders for the strut there, and it's pretty cool. So, and the gear is down and locked. If you look up here, there's a window, there's a red pin up here. So you can see it from the cockpit.
Oh wow.
So this tells us that the gear is down and locked while we're flying. If you don't feel it, you look over here and you look for the red pin, right and left.
So if you see that red pin, you can tell from the cockpit you got down and lock.
Correct.
Regardless of the indications in the cockpit, like
Correct.
you have a burn light bulb or things like that.
Correct, because we have the lights in the cockpit, we have the gear lever, we have this, and then the control tower. They don't use this anymore because they're not trained on it, but back in the day, there was a guy in the control tower with binoculars. He would look here at the wheels of each T-6. This other landing gear has another one. These will light up when the aircraft is powered. That signals the gear is down and locked. So if the control tower doesn't see those light on, he'll tell the pilot to go around and tell him his gear's not down and locked. And the pilot will troubleshoot, come back in and make another landing. So that's pretty cool. It's very unique landing gear.
So how about the brake system? How is it? Seems like it's a very small wheel compared to the size of the tire.
Correct. So we get a smaller brakes. These are upgraded redline brakes. These aren't the original brakes. The original brakes just aren't good for today. So these are much safer, more modern brakes, and most warbirds have these redline brakes in them. This has 3 brake pads on them.
And do you use them all the time to do differential braking when you are taxiing, being a conventional landing gear or a tow car?
Well, this has steerable tail wheel in the back.
Oh,
so, it's really cool, so we don't have to use them as much.
Oh, Makes it life a lot easier for sure.
Oh yeah. You really got to get them doing the run up though. When you're doing the run up, you got to be stationary in a higher power ground. You really have to hold those brakes. This airplane wants to leap off the ground.
So ground looping is one of those things that it's also another threat to operations.
Yes, this airplane loves to ground loop. It's so heavy, there's so much weight up front that the airplane really just wants to go that way. And so it takes a lot of effort, a lot of concentration to keep the
So
airplane going.
for our
right.
viewers that are not familiar with a conventional landing gear or tail wheel, effectively what happened is the actual weight of the aircraft, the center of gravity is concentrated rear of the wheels. So if you draw a line following the wheels back, as soon as that tail wheel passes that line, you're basically the equivalent of pushing a shopping cart and then pushing it by one side. So the heavier part of the shopping cart is going to try to steer in front. So as a pilot, it's very important to be managing those controls in it. Do you have a particular technique that you use when you operate the tail wheel to prevent ground looping?
Yeah, there's just certain areas of flight you just try not to fly in. So you kind of want the tail on the ground, and if you're doing a wheel landing, the area where it gets really squirrely is right before the tail wheel touches down on the ground. That's where it's most prone. Because if you get a gust of wind that low to the ground, there's really nothing that can stop it from turning. And so you don't want to be in that regime for very long. So when I go up, when I do wheel landing, I can tail up, and then when the airplane stops flying, I just bring it right back down to the ground, and I keep it there.
Okay.
So I just try to avoid that region altogether.
Got it. Can you lock it? Is it
Yes,
lockable?
this is a lockable tail wheel.
So it'll definitely help a little bit with helping the aircraft continue to go straight down the runway.
So that's one of our landing checks, is to make sure tail wheel is locked.
So Kyle, what makes a radial engine so special?
So it's awesome sound, and this is one of the loudest warbirds that are out there. The reason why it's so loud is because the propeller tip goes supersonic. As for physics, everything on the outside of the circle turns faster than the inside in order to attain with the same rate. So the outside is traveling way faster and actually hits supersonic speeds, and that's why you get the huge wow out of the T6s.
It's a magical sound that makes the aircraft sound so special, and
Yes.
you can recognize that compared to any other type of reciprocating engine and the
Yes.
type of aircraft that are more common in modern aviation. So it definitely gives it that World War II spirit to it.
All right, here inside the cockpit, we talk about the hydraulics. It's a little unique from all other hydraulic systems. This airplane really doesn't have a hydraulic pump per se. So when we want to raise and lower the landing gear, and same with the flaps, we have a power push lever, which only actuated when the engine's running. So it's way down here. You push that button, gives us 2 minutes of hydraulic pressure, so enough to raise or lower the landing gear. So just all it does is just actuate the actuators, just throws pressure in there, allows us the control surfaces to move. Then if that fails, we have this cool hand hydraulic pump here. It just pops out like that, and you just pump it. You have to do a lot of back and forth. And then we have a hydraulic system pressure gauge. Here, I'll show the camera here for a second. All right, and over here, that's a hydraulic pressure gauge over there. There's the landing gear indicators and the flap indicators. And we can do this emergency hydraulic pump. As you can see, the needle is barely moving. You gotta do this a lot. And as it gets tougher, it's tough, and then we can do the flaps down like that.
So the idea
And
is
then
to
there it
pressurize
goes.
the system while you're operating it.
Correct.
And reduce stress by
Correct, and
allowing
then
it to bleed off.
yeah, and then there's the flaps going down all the way to 45 degrees. And you can't see the flaps from here because they're underneath the wing. They're split flaps. And then we can raise them. We'll go up, and then we continue pumping. And then they slowly will come back up. So this is the emergency hydraulic pump. We also do this for testing and everything when we're on the ground. So now the flaps are up. We just take this and this goes straight down and stows just like that.
Cool.
And there's the power push level right there.
So how about fuel? What's up with that bobble pump that I keep hearing about?
So this airplane does not have an electronic fuel pump. So we have called a wobble pump. So it's basically just a manual fuel pump. So when we start the engine, we have to crank this a bunch of times to get the fuel PSI, and then we can engage once we have enough fuel pressure, then we can start the engine. And once the engine starts, the engine has its own fuel pump, which actually has enough power to draw it out of the tanks. In emergencies, we can keep pumping this if we have to. But it actually does a really good job of doing that all on its own. So this airplane doesn't have it anymore. We have a new starter, but the old T6s, you could start it outside of the aircraft if you had to. So we have this all locked up now, but this would come out, would pull out to about this far, and you could put your foot on it and use for leverage. And then this little panel here, you'd put a handle in, and you sit there and rotate it like that. You can YouTube other inertial starters, is what it was called, inertial starter. And so it takes a long time, and you just keep cranking it, and does this huge wind-up noise. And then when you're ready, there's a pin that you pull which engages the starter once you get to a certain speed. But you had to be careful though, when you started, this thing starts spinning, so that's why the handle is there to keep you pushing away from
So
the propeller.
instead of actually turning the complete radial engine, you turn something like a flywheel. You
Basically,
get it up to speed,
it's
and
an
then
inertial,
you
yeah, it's
engage
basically
it,
like
so
a
that-
flywheel, and then you engage the starter, which engages the flywheel to the crankshaft.
Oh, cool.
Starts it.
Pretty common also. They're World War II type models. So
Yeah.
especially the German models were notorious for having the 2 or 3 code ships.
Yeah,
cranking
there's a
that
couple
front.
ME-109s that still operate this way. World War I airplanes did this constantly as well. The later World War I models.
So cool. And what is this air scoop for?
That's the lower. There's a lot of equipment back here. Just we have air coming in and it keeps everything nice and cool.
All right. Is this an engine turbocharged?
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
It's naturally aspirated, but we have a little blower in there which helps
Cool.
get everything in there through there.
And that lash you're talking about, where you service the oil to it?
Yep, that's where the oil comes out. We have a special tool called a Zeus fastener. It's like a bigger flathead screwdriver.
All right.
But if you ask a mechanic to use a flathead screwdriver and a Zeus fastener, they're going to yell at you pretty quick. So we keep one inside the airplane because pilots are always losing them, forgetting them. So we fashion one to keep in the airplane, and then we just got a little oil right there. I can take it out for you if you want.
Sure. Show us.
All it is just a
Oh,
little
wow,
dipstick.
look at
Yep, 10 gallons is what it holds. So right now it's hovering right around 7. So we'll take the oil from the bottom. It's still good oil. We'll just throw it in here.
All about recycling.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks.